Amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned, because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Hey, everybody. Look, it's been a while, but I want to tell you, you all know I grew up with sci-fi. I talk about it a lot. Fast forward to who I am today. I talk about sci-fi a lot. The other day, no, last night actually in the show, I made a reference to a 1950 original movie that had to do with a film that came out that was remade. And I made a comment, and the comment I made was, look, sci-fi as we know it today, its origins, especially in our pop culture, if you think your mom or your grandma was not part of a movement, you need to go back and look at some of these black and white movies. And when you think about The Day the Earth Stood Still, or you think about some of these movies, you will get a deep understanding of how they laid the bedrock. But what has been missing in the sci-fi world, at least we had a touch of it in a couple of sci-fi movies, let me call it The Matrix. But other than that, it was really missing. And that was taking science fiction and romance and putting them together. And when you do that, clearly, you all will agree with me, when you do that in a way that connects people with the beautiful abstract version of what you think a world could be, and then the love and the romance that generates from that world, the challenges, the trials, the tribulations, then you get Fionne Foxxe Faraday's smoldering, understatement, Mates of the Alliance series. This one here, it's a follow-up. This one here, this what we're talking about, DARZIK, this is coming out. Most of you heard the interview we did once before, and you will now know that, of course, we needed to bring this forward. Fionne, great to have you.
It's great to be back. Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Pat. It's always a pleasure.
You know, look at what I'm saying, right? Okay, so there have been sci-fi, but one of the things that has been underplayed is you know what, I'm a little bit annoyed right now at one of the Hollywood people, but I don't want to go into that just yet for the scenes they're cutting out in the upcoming Aquaman movie. And somehow they haven't learned that people want the whole enchilada, but you've learned that, because that's why you're combining the beautiful sensual aspect, you know, this amazing steaminess of what people experience, the juiciness, and now we're putting it in the context of sci-fi. Why? Because it doesn't matter what universe you go to, we want romance, don't we?
Yes, we want romance and we want happy endings, or at least happy for them.
Yeah. What was it like for you to make the decision? And let's talk about the first time we met. How did we get here today? How did you get here today? You know, what was it that called to you to say, man, I got to come out with this book now?
It was the first wave of COVID, and we didn't have really anything to offer our patients, and we were losing entire families. And, you know, doctors have it easy because we come by, maybe we'll spend an hour, sometimes a little longer if they're real sick, and then we move to the next patient. The nurses, the ICU nurses are there for 12 hours. And this is before we had families in for support. So these nurses were the only support system that these patients who were usually dying had. And the nurses showed up knowing every day that they'd probably lose their patients at some point. And they did it because they were it for their patients. That was their job. And because they had they developed deep emotional connections to these people. And it took an extreme toll on them. So I did science fiction because I wanted to give us the happy endings we weren't seeing in real life. And the nice thing about science fiction, you can make tech up. So, they were able to heal people that otherwise they would have lost.
Yeah, I want to mention this. Let's talk about this for a minute. I want to mention this because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've taken a topic that nobody wants to talk about, and it's rarely talked about even in relationships. And that is those people that have suffered or have survived sexual assault, and whatever we want to call it in today's world. I mean, the numbers on women just have gotten released by various organizations on the impact of that post-COVID now.
Yeah.
But here we are. And, what you do is you're bringing us on this journey. You don't shy away from the fact that a main character in the book is that character that comes forward, right? It follows the journey of Emily, correct?
Yes.
And it really points to, demonstrate, shows how one can grow closer. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, she actually changed her entire life, and you will find out that how much she changed her life in the prologue, actually. But she's put her life on hold for about 5 years after this happened, and now she sees her best friend and her mate, Daria and KAIRN, and she also sees wonderful examples of relationships in her family, and she's realized that she's kind of letting herself be a victim again by letting this impact her life. And she's decided that she's going to take her life back. And she feels an incredible attraction to DARZIK. They've sensed something from their first meeting, but she had so many walls that she didn't know how to get over them. And now she's decided that I'm going to take my life back. And he's been waiting for her very patiently. And she's like, I'm done with waiting, and I want this now. And he doesn't know what hit him, because he's been very patient, very supportive, very loving, staying in the background, being one of her best cheerleaders without, pushing himself on her. And he's just waiting for her to be ready. And now she's ready, and he does not know what's going to hit him.
And, you weave this in with a new alien species. Okay. Background, intergalactic culture, subcultures. And I wanted to ask you about that, because it's always been part of the beauty and the creativity that you bring forth. You have a beautiful way of, through these stories and through these main characters and others, to really have a micro and a macro, perhaps for the times we're living in now. I don't know if that's just my perception, but when I read this, it's almost like at an energetic, innate level, take out the sci-fi and you could be talking about us now.
Well, these cultures, the humans and the Luperans and some other species that we meet later, just to look at them, you'd never imagine they have anything in common.
Right.
But take away the superficial differences, and they find what completes them. And these superficial differences, which are arbitrarily defined, really, we have so much more in common than we have different. And we just have to look beneath our differences, embrace our differences. That's part of what makes us unique and what we bring to the table. And the interesting thing too is, these aliens, have superb tech, and they're, physically very imposing, but the humans are not the damsels in distress. Mm-hmm. They have a lot to contribute. They bring a lot to the table. They're equal partners, and their alien mates see them as such.
First of all, I didn't congratulate you for Mates of the Alliance Book 1 and the awards that book, the rave reviews that book continues to get. I said this to you last time. I know that Hollywood is probably waiting you to write the trilogy, because that's the way their brains are. You know that, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? They're like, okay, where's the other couple of books, right? But this could be such a beautiful story told. And I want to make a comment and have you react to it. I'm probably the only one Fionne, I'm probably the only one that the end of the last version of the Star Wars stuff, I'm probably the only one on the planet that thought, oh my God, no, don't have Adam Driver, don't kill him. No, he's got to live. We've got to see the romance. I'm probably the only one that said, maybe because I read your book. But I don't know why we stopped there. Now, clearly there are some other books, there are some other publications that do a very, very good job, but rarely do you find a book that captures everything that you do in Intergalactic, captures the heart, the soul, but also the challenges. Why was this important for you to make sure the romance continued?
Because, you know, Emily was such a sympathetic character. She was powerful. She was a wonderful friend. And she had so much pain that she was almost like, well, she was the outsider looking in when her best friend when Daria found KAIRN. And watching their relationship and seeing it deepen, she realized that is what, maybe not the exact same thing, but something like that is what she really wants. She also has wonderful examples in her family, and she knows that DARZIK is incredibly more than attracted to her, and that there's a bond already forming, and she feels it too. She's just been through so much. She doesn't even know how to start. And I wanted to show their evolution of their relationship and how supportive he is going to be for her, and has been. Even, you know, they have been security, you know, protecting them for a while, and he managed to snag most of the rotations from his friends. He switched out, and there was an inside joke between him and his bridge crew that, yeah, you know, we will surrender our rotations to you gladly, because they all know, they see what's developing between them, and it's a very special thing. You know, KAIRN was the first one of the Brotherhood to find his mate in Daria, and he gave them hope. And seeing how DARZIK is bonding to Emily even before she actually lowers her walls gives them hope as well.
You talk about hope, but I want to stay with this a minute. That's why I said to you that if you stripped away the sci-fi and we looked at this is sort of, for me, and I'm going to call it an upcoming trilogy. This is, for me, you know, a representation of how to really look behind the lens, get inside of the body, mind, and soul of what people are experiencing in the world today. Because if there's one thing we need today, it's hope. And if we can find it through the lens of another person, especially someone like you, that is very clear about writing about love and relationships and challenges and emotional, you know, resonance. I mean, this is what you're doing. And yet you made this exciting for us, right? I mean, seriously, how do I get to read a book about this that's going to get me all fired up and make me think about my own heart? Oh, wait, there's a new species I now get to meet.
You know, part of the fun in this too is, you know, we take so much for granted. You know, we think that we are the most intelligent creatures on our planet, and we are very, very smart. But we underestimate the intelligence of so many of our fellow inhabitants. And I wanted to point that out because DARZIK finds himself in quite a difficult situation, and animals basically help him get out of it. Without their help, he might not be with her.
Yeah. And
the animals that emerge are actually very interesting because there's sometimes when you have, say, like a big forest fire, it's like a truce is called amongst all the animals, predators, prey, doesn't matter. You're all trying to just survive. And this is like a deeper dive into that, and to maybe there can be more than that, because, you know, animals have, I think, a lot more potential than we realize. And of course, you know, this is a lot of it's projection. It's my world. I kind of made it up, and I chose some animals I thought were very intriguing. But, you know, the animals are amazing. And some of these creatures that come to his assistance and rescue, really, the research and the things you learn about them, they are incredible. And, you know, we can't even duplicate some of the things they can do by far. Yeah.
I want to ask you this question because many people don't know this, and I want to just go back to this. I mean, of course, we're talking about mates of the alliance, but there's a word that many people, when I say it and when you just said it, they're like, what did she say? Looperns? What was that? What was that word? Okay, I want to talk about that because I want to hear from you your description of them, because I know where I go when I see anything that says LUP something.
Yes, yes.
Am I, you know what I'm saying without saying
Yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So they are sort of wolf-like humanoids. They're about 7.5 feet tall. They have fangs and claws, retractable claws, a tail. They are very fiercely clannish and very fiercely loyal. Their families become their friends become the family that they choose, and that's an underlying theme through the books as well. That family is not necessarily just blood, and they are incredibly loyal. The tagline that I've been using when I do social media these days, which has been quite an interesting experience by itself, is that they are committed, they are devoted, they're fiercely faithful, they are protective, and mates just are. And these mates, when they find their person, they are utterly theirs. There is no, they see no one else.
Yep. I got to tell you, I thought about you last week, and I knew I was going to do this interview with you. And I thought about you because I don't know if you know this, but one of my totems is wolf. I discovered that on a vision quest with indigenous people that decided that I was worthy to stay out in the desert for 11 days. And I discovered that, and they discovered it with me. I have a couple of others. Another one is rattlesnake. And another one is, lizard. But the most important thing I want to say about it is it's always been something I related to. I can't tell you what day or year at age 6 that I so wished that I could be Lon Chaney in The Werewolf. Okay. I just crazy, like watching the reruns of that. But I want to fast forward to where we are today, because our fascination and our belief, I want to talk about our belief. How do we know this? Look at what's happening in our pop culture now. Now, some people follow this and some don't, but I got to tell you, I just got through the I don't know what channel it's on, the series called Wolfpack. I watched that, and I was a little bit at the beginning, and of course I read your books, right? And so I knew, but I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is that connection. I have to tell you that I can't give out too much here for you people that haven't watched it, but there is an energy and a dynamic that you talk about in this book. You can feel it. Smoldering is one word, but there's something like it's almost like an unconditional drawn in feeling on something that's so meant to be. Is that right?
Yeah, because their bond, and it becomes empathic and deeper than that, even as the closer they get. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. And some people will say, well, give us something to relate to, and it's not quite the same thing, but the closest I can come to is, say, Avatar, Shape of Water, Ruby Dixon. It just to give them a point of reference. But
yeah,
the bonds that these couples form, and there's a cute little scene, and she calls him by Emily calls Darzik by a nickname, and he has one for her, and she's not sure if she's like, I won't call you this in public because I know that you may not like it. And he's like, why would I not like it? Because it's not it's not what some people would say is a masculine nickname. And he's like, I think that it is wonderful, and please call me that whenever you want. I will be the envy of my brothers when they hear it, because that is a symbol of what you think of me, and that is the greatest compliment you can give me.
Wow. I love this. And, let me ask you this question too, because I know we only have a short time here. I've often wondered what is in the mind of an author I've often wondered, when you get up every day, what do you look forward to reading about? I also know that you have a job and you work in a world that is excruciatingly, dynamically up and down, inside out. When we're talking about military, medical personnel, we're talking about medicine, we're talking about life. I know these are things that you have deeply immersed and committed yourself to. I know they do influence you because you've shared that. But what I don't know is if I said to you today, look, outside of your book, what do you grab off the shelf and you can't wait to get yourself into? What are you drawn to?
I am drawn to, well, there's one particular author because she writes alternate, I guess, fantasy worlds. And it's sort of along the same lines. And it's an author by the name of Grace Draven, and I'll read pretty much anything she puts out. And she has one series that's my favorite, and it's about they're a race of, I guess, dark elves, as close as I can come to. And they and the humans have to have a marriage of convenience between the royalty families because for an alliance, and neither one of them have had much exposure to each other, and they have horrible misconceptions, and they do not think the other is remotely attractive. So it leads to a lot of humor, and they become friends first, and over time they realize how much they share, and they slowly fall in love. And it's hysterical because their first encounter, there was an exchange of insults, actually. And it was very amusing. And it's also, it illustrates how different cultures can be, and how people come to try to share and compromise. And, relationships are all about compromise. It can't just be all one way. And I truly do enjoy our books.
I got to ask you this question, and I don't like to have these conversations with you and give out too much. But before we go, tell people where we are with people getting the book. How did they get the book? Let's just make sure everybody knows how to find out more about you, how to find out other things you're doing. What's the best way for people to do that?
Well, there's a website, and it's Mates of the Alliance. It is available. It will be available hopefully in mid-June or so.
Yeah.
On Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's going to be coming up hopefully for pre-order soon. We just have to get the links in order. I'm on Twitter. Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm in Instagram jail currently, so no one can find me right now because I turned my account private. On top of that, because I got bombarded by spam. Yeah, there's such a thing as being popular in a bad way on that.
Yeah, I understand that completely.
Yeah, and I've been living in the Mates of the Alliance world for 3 years now, and it's therapy for me, free therapy on top of that. So I'm still writing, and I'm a bit further along the book than the trilogy that we were talking about, shall we say.
Okay. I got to ask you this question because I don't talk about this much every time I talk to you, but somehow our culture has to have a villain. And yes. How do I know that? Oh my God. Ryan Reynolds has taught us that in Deadpool. And, how did he teach us? And even in Free Guy, he teaches us that, if you don't come up with the right villain, you're pretty much going to fail. And we've seen the failure in even blockbuster movies, right? And the whole DC series comic and the when you talk about the Justice League, if they'd have picked a different villain, we'd be in a whole different place. Do villains, are we going to get some like juicy villainous things show up here in this book, the next book, like the third book?
Let me think. Book 3. It's not so much villains. It's more self-realization of what we have done. And some of the villain, the quote unquote evil aliens that introduced in the book 1. Part of the point is that not everyone is bad. And you have to, there are some people who redeem themselves absolutely beautifully. And in the most surprising ways. And some of because I'm all about animal familiars is what I call them, animal companions. And some of the animals that bond to our heroes and heroines are not what you would ever expect.
I love it.
And that was part of the, and the bonds they form are beautiful. It was just, and the acceptance that these animals receive when they expect to be rejected was, and actually I didn't plan on writing that. It just kind of put itself, and that's one of my favorite scenes. And that's actually in book, that's in book 4.
Book 4? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, look, you're talking to somebody who has on her top 10 favorite songs, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones.
Yes.
So you got a little sense of that. But I love what you do. I love what you write. I mean, I can see this on the big screen. And, you know, I'm so honored to be having these talks with you. And I try not to reveal too much, but I want to encourage folks to take a deep dive with you. And if they haven't read your first book, this is great to kind of put these together. You know, clearly this is an extraordinary story. It's a story of healing, restoration, and trust, and really does mimic what people go through in the world today. I have one last question, and I want to thank you again. What would you like to leave us with? What didn't I touch?
You know, I think what I want people to realize is, you know, these books, what's we've woven through them is hope, because we need hope, and that's what gets us through. And there's been sort of a, unfortunately, kind of a lack of it. And also, you know, laughter. You know, these people, these couples are so much in love, but there's also a lot of humor. The things they share, draw them closer. They have in jokes pretty much between every single couple. That's just between the two of them. That's their thing, so to speak. And that Earth is actually one of the main characters in the books. Wow. And when you asked about a villain, the villain isn't in some of the later books isn't actually a person. It's the things that they have to deal with to try and preserve the Earth and bring it back to the pristine beauty it should be. And you know, these aliens, these Luperans, the Icorian, you'll meet the Cassani later. They were part of the Alliance, and they now see Earth as their home. And you know, they will do what they have to protect their home from whatever, you know, from internal threats, from external threats, you know. And we have to protect our planet. It's the only one we have.
Yeah. I love you. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I always get excited to speak with you, to read what you have. I want to encourage all of you out there to please, mates of the Alliance, please, you can Google it. You'll find Fionne, you'll find everybody out there. Thank you so much for, at least for somebody like me that just looks forward to getting immersed in a world that may seem sci-fi, but so touches the heart in memorance. And thank you so much for doing that.
No, thank you, because I hope that this book resonates with people and makes them smile. And, you know, sometimes cry a little, because there's some interesting stuff in there. And make them, you know, want to share it, because it leaves them with a warm, uplifting feeling, because they feel hope and maybe want to read it again or pass it along to a friend. Yeah. And the other thing, and I don't describe the heroines very much, because because I want people to be able to see themselves. Having said that, I did describe Emily a bit more, just because of the introductory scene needed to be set. Yeah. But and even the aliens, it leaves a lot up to the imagination, except for, you know, the height and you know, the horns, and that's later. And the claws and whatnot. Yeah.
But that's what makes it fun. See, for me, you're talking to somebody, when I read it, I am not like, well, first of all, I'm what you call learning different. So my disability is I don't see words, I see imagery. And if I don't see the imagery, I fill it in. That's what makes this so exciting for me. I mean, I literally sat down, and when I looked at this, I had a color palette that I created. And that's what you do. You invite people to carve and craft the parts of their creativity and allow them not to be right or wrong about it, to just be in it. That's what's so beautiful about the way you write, Fionne.
Thank you. You know,
Yeah.
we're so set on arbitrary differences, but superficial ones. And there's a scene, it's in book one, but it was basically KAIRN's introduction to politicians. And
I remember that.
yes, and his answer was, because they made a really bigoted comment, and his response was, I feel sorry for you because I thought that you judged on merit. Judging on superficial differences is such a shallow, not intelligent way to do things.
Yeah.
And he put it a lot more succinctly than I just said, without giving away the entire scene. But we have so much in common. That's what's so maddening when you see all the people and focusing on differences. The differences aren't that big. They're part of what makes each culture special and unique, and we should learn to appreciate them and not disparage them.
Yeah. Powerful message, Fionne. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for all that you're doing to wake us up even more. Thank you so much for this conversation.
No, thank you. I always enjoy visiting with you. And when Scott sends me a list, and it's like, your name's on it, it's like, oh, this is going to be so much fun.
Totally fun.
It always is.
And I do my best not to give out the whole story, because I want folks to really take the journey. And the journey is so relatable, but yet so fun. What I call fantasy tactic. It's just beautiful. Thank you, Fionne. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you out there. Again, I'm going to tell you, Mates of the Alliance. It's a series. I didn't know there was a book for, but I'm excited. For those of you out there, take the journey. And again, this is really a journey of the heart. And yes, it is sci-fi. We need it. All right, everybody, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Welcoming Dr. Ellie Zarabian, host of From Chaos to Connection, growing from pain toward community. Are you ready to make the most of your challenges while moving ahead with your dreams? Do you want your spiritual growth to be part of your healing while living your life with purpose? On Chaos to Connection, you will find resources to transform your difficulties into connections with others. Change is achievable. Dr. Ellie helps you make change both within and in the world. Learn to heal past traumas, become more self-assured, and take action in the world. No matter your spiritual background or cultural heritage, we will work together to transform pain and trauma to community and well-being. You can make this world a better place, starting with yourself. From Chaos to Connection starts now.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me live today. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarabian, and this is my show, From Chaos to Connection. If you're interested in the topic of personal growth and building better relationships at home and in the world, then you're in the right place. Let me first take a few minutes to introduce myself and my background and talk to you about the concept of resilience. I think given what we're faced with globally, we could all use some pointers on how to remain more secure and sane, and perhaps even grow as a result of all that's going on. My story, my personal journey, in many ways has prepared me for what's happening in the world today. You see, my story is one of death, rebirth, and resurrection. And if that sounds a little biblical to you, then you're correct. I believe that anyone who has lived through a difficult childhood and has turned out okay, and even went on to become an exceptional human being as an adult, has lived a biblical story. My story began from the minute I was born. You see, I was born in Tehran, Iran, into a middle-class Jewish family. And my earliest memories of my childhood home is waking up every morning to see the daily newspaper splattered with photographs of executions that took place the day before. This was a time of social unrest war, and a revolution. I remember I used to study those pictures very carefully. Of course, at the time, I didn't know what they were, but I always wondered why the men stood up so upright with their hands tied behind their back and their eyes blindfolded. I never knew why they had to cover their eyes. I also remember seeing their clothes splattered with blood, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's what you look like when you're dead. Another vivid memory that I have is auditory. I'll never forget the sound of dropping bombs. There's a distinct high-pitched sound that's very similar to fireworks. It's just 1,000 times stronger. To this day, I love to watch fireworks, but every time I go out for 4th of July, I have to mentally prepare. So these were just some of the memories from the beginning of my life, and just the beginning of the struggles of what life had installed for me. Psychologists say that if a child has undergone severe childhood experiences, the prognosis for a healthy and happy life is very poor. In fact, most people with severe childhood trauma grow up to have many problems as adults. They may suffer from mental illness, health issues, drug and alcohol addiction and abuse, homelessness, and even die an early death. But I'm here to tell you that none of those outcomes happened for me. Although I did struggle with depression in my 20s, for the most part, I was able to go on and create a bountiful life for myself, surrounded with beautiful children, a home, good friends, good health, and a fulfilling practice. Most importantly, I've been blessed with a great deal of joy in my heart, despite all the hardship I have endured. In psychology, we call this resilience. And psychologists always want to know what makes some people so resilient in the face of so much difficulty in life. How is it possible that some people can endure so much pain and still turn out to be okay, and some even become exceptional human beings, while others with much less difficulty can end up struggling so much in life? My hope for creating these podcasts is to help you learn more about resilience by giving you examples of my own life and the lives of clients I have worked with. I hope you too can learn to become stronger in the face of difficulties, especially given all that's happening around us in the world today, in the wake of a global pandemic, floods, earthquakes, extreme weather conditions, and financial and political turmoil. In fact, I feel that it's crucial that we learn the skills and the tools that are needed to stay afloat and even do well in life, given all that's going on. So what's the problem? Well, as you're aware, these are some unprecedented times and on a global scale. What we're experiencing in our backyard is reflected many times over in the world at large. Meaning, if we're still dealing with the effects of COVID here in the US, imagine where the developing countries are with it. Or if we're dealing with high gas prices or severe weather conditions, imagine what's going on in other countries that are less resourceful. While we're dealing with a pandemic, housing and climate crisis, homelessness, massive layoffs, a recession, and political turmoil here at home, other countries like Israel and Pakistan may be on the brink of a civil war, along with financial and social collapse, while other countries like Ukraine continue to be plagued with war, death, and destruction. So where are we going with all this? Sadly, no one knows. Some say we're on the verge of a global collapse. Others are more optimistic and say it's the coming of the Messianic era where peace, tranquility, and prosperity will prevail. Well, what I'm most interested in is how you're doing with all this on an individual level and how we collectively as global citizens are dealing with this level of chaos. These are some of the fireworks and bombs that are going off around us. And I want to know how you're managing. Based on my intro that I shared with you earlier, you're aware that I went through a mini version of this kind of chaos early in my life. I shared about how my earliest childhood memories were based on memories of death and destruction. But I also shared that I was able to come through all that chaos in one piece and in relatively good mental and physical health. Again, to be able to experience extreme difficulty in the face of life and come through okay is called resilience. So I want to ask you, are you being resilient at this time in your life? Are you able to wake up every morning still feeling gratitude for what you have, for what you're able to give and receive? Are you able to count your blessings and see your glass as half full? Or the opposite? Are you waking up every morning feeling heavy, sad, burdened, and wondering how you're going to get through the day? So if your tank is a little low at this time and you need some support and encouragement, I'm here to offer what I can to help you through these challenging times. Given all that's going on right now, my hope is to create an intentional global community where we come together and offer care and support to one another and be a source of inspiration for others in the world. So today, I want to share with you 3 practical tools that will definitely help you build resilience. I personally myself have been practicing these tools most of my life, and I can assure you that if you apply some version of these tools to your own life, you will do just fine. By the way, I also love to hear from you with regards to what you're doing to help stay afloat and positive during these times. So feel free to share your comments in the Facebook chat box below. Okay, so we're going to continue this conversation, but first, let's take a short break. And you can go ahead and check out my website at Center on Peace in the meantime, and we'll be right back. See you soon.
You're driven, and it totally shows. Your career is taking off, you're killing it in the mom game. But did your health needs make it on the plate this week? Tune in to Boss Up Babes, where Carissa Adkins helps babes show up, boss up, and thrive. Every second and fourth Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Become the boss babe you were meant to be. To sign up for one of Carissa's group coaching programs, visit 365dailyhustle.com.
Join Dr. Ellie Zarabian, host of From Chaos to Connection, Growing from Pain to Community, every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. You can impact the world in the most powerful way. Whatever your spiritual background or cultural heritage, you can transform pain and trauma into community and well-being. On Chaos to Connection, Dr. Ellie helps you identify what you need to make progress on your life's journey. Visit centeronpeace.com.
Welcome back. So, what's the medicine? Research shows us that the number one way people are able to maintain a strong sense of self during difficult times is to have some kind of a spiritual belief or practice. Now, it doesn't have to be a formal religion or practice to be considered spiritual. It just means that you have some belief in a power above your own ego or your immediate sense of self. That could mean a higher power like God, or it could mean a connection to humanity or nature, like the ocean or the mountains. Having a spiritual belief or practice has many benefits that help fight depression and anxiety. For example, when you pray or meditate or spend time in nature, you neutralize the bad chemicals in your brain, so you're not deep in your worries about the past or the future. You remain grounded and calm in the present time, and remaining present in the moment actually helps alleviate signs of stress and anxiety. I like to share my own story around spirituality with you, which I think you will find interesting. My point here is to show you that even in the face of considerable chaos, warfare, and trauma, it is still possible to find something beautiful and life-affirming. For me, growing up during wartime in a country that was going through a religious revolution, having to escape and become a refugee, and then migrating a second time to the US to start life twice over, was definitely more than any person could handle, let alone a child. So you may wonder, how did I do it? How did I find a consistent, sustainable spiritual path to something greater than myself and at such a young age with little to no guidance? How was it possible to build something so solid and secure to help sustain me and help me bypass a whole host of problems, like I mentioned, mental illness, addiction, and poor health? It's really amazing what the human spirit can achieve with just a little bit of tenacity. Many of you know that I have quite an extensive background in Sufism, even though I was born into a Jewish family. You see, in Iran, like most patriarchal societies, girls are not encouraged to pursue a spiritual path regardless of their religion. Even though I had a strong proclivity towards spirituality from an early age, I could not formally study anything religious simply because of my gender. I remember being around age 5 or 6 years old and going to the temple with my grandmother. Like the other women, we always had to sit in the back of the temple, and all I could ever hear were the women talking nonstop around me. The women talked because no one could understand what was being said or read or discussed by the priests. But over the years, I just watched and observed the movements of these men. I observed how they would quietly whisper to themselves while closing their eyes, or gently rock back and forth while reading the holy books. In my childish way of trying to make sense of what I was seeing, I used to think that these men were actually talking to God. So I would go home and hold up a book and pretend that I was talking to God. Believe it or not, that started my own inner spiritual journey towards a very personal inner experience. I couldn't rely on external religion to teach me how to pray or seek inner guidance, but I learned to do that by just watching people and then getting creative and finding a way to what worked for me. Also around this time, shortly before we fled Iran, I was introduced to Sufism. And some of you may know that the Sufis, or the dervishes of Iran, were the spiritual seekers who denounced the material world in exchange for a higher spiritual calling. I remember a day when I went to on a school outing at the local museum, and I must have been about 6 years old. I went with my class, but I ended up wandering off on my own because I had found a corner in the museum where they were showcasing the artifacts and clothes of the ancient dervishes of Iran. And I was so moved and so intrigued by everything in that room that I stayed in there for what seemed like hours, or until I was found. These two experiences ended up eventually helping me find the path to where I am today, a place of inner peace, love, and gratitude. People often ask me how I explain this strange and even bizarre spiritual upbringing. And I say, for me, it's simple. My Jewish roots taught me about the existence of God, and my Sufi roots taught me about a direct path to the experience of God. For me, one cannot exist without the other. The two of them together have formed the person I am today. Another way of looking at my upbringing is to say that my biological family is Jewish and my adopted family is Sufi. I will share more with you about my spiritual journey as we delve further into the topic of resilience. But for now, I want to go and talk about the second tool to cultivate in your life. And that's having some form of movement, activity, or exercise in your daily life. Again, it doesn't have to be anything formal like going to the gym 3 times a week, although that's a great way to release stress. But if you're not a gym person, then just walking every day for half an hour or an hour around the neighborhood or the park is sufficient. When you move your body, you release endorphins or good chemicals in the brain. And by doing that you help alleviate symptoms of stress and worry. If you do that every day for half an hour or an hour, you're resisting building stagnation in your mind and body. Now, for me, walking helps me stay strong. I have found that if I don't move my body, depression is very quick to set in. So when I get on the treadmill or I go walking, I work through what's bothering me or stressing me out while I'm exercising, and then I end up reaching a place of resolution in my mind where I release all the negative effects of those thoughts. And then I'm not holding on to the toxic effects of negative thinking. So take a mental imagery inventory of your life right now. How much do you move daily? Are you mostly stuck sitting behind a desk or your computer or on the couch or behind the steering wheel? If so, what's one small step you can take today to move your body just a little bit more? We're talking baby steps. Think of it and do it again tomorrow. If you do this for 2 weeks straight, you have built up a positive habit and it's there for you for life. Okay, the third and final tool that I want to recommend that you try to implement into your life is the practice of radical honesty. At first, that may sound strange or even unrealistic because you're not used to it. You may not even be familiar with it. But in order to hold yourself accountable and make the necessary changes in your life, I want to encourage you to be totally honest with yourself and about yourself at the present time, what's happening in your life. So if you're having a hard time with some aspect of life, like relationships or work, I want to encourage you to acknowledge it and talk about it with a trusted friend or family member or anyone who's a good listener. You see, the reason is because most people who struggle with depression and anxiety feel very alone in their thoughts and feelings. They think no one will understand them or be able to help them. And that's just not true. So just acknowledging that you're having a difficult time is a big step forward. For me, when I have negative or anxious thoughts and I can't work through them or release them through meditation or exercise, I just acknowledge them, that I'm acknowledge that I'm having a hard time, so I don't feel guilty or pressured to feel happy or be in control. And then I can just let it go. Okay. And I love the explanation that Rumi gives. He says, sometimes you have unwanted guests visiting your home, moving the furniture around, banging things here and there, disturbing your peace of mind. But eventually they will leave. So I know that I don't need to fret about the situation or try to control it in any shape or form. I just let it be. Radical honesty is to do what you can to acknowledge your situation and do something about it. But if you can't, then you give yourself room to have those feelings without feeling bad. Then, when you're ready, you seek guidance. Believe it or not, practicing these 3 tools for over 3 decades is what has helped me stay grounded and sane for the most of my life. Okay, so to wrap it up, remember that there are 3 important ways to build resilience. Number 1 is connecting with something greater than yourself, whether it's a formal religion or informal spirituality like meditation or connection with nature. Number 2, creating movement in your daily life, either through formal exercise or walks around the park or the neighborhood. And number 3, practicing radical honesty with yourself, talking and sharing about what's going on for you with a trusted friend, family member, clergy, or therapist. If you like the content of my podcast today, please like my page and tune in twice a month, every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific time for more helpful talks like this one. If you can't make it to the talk live, then a recording will be available wherein you can watch it at a later time at your own leisure. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarabian, coming to you from Transformation Network, from Chaos to Connection.
You have been listening to Dr. Ellie Zarabian, host of From Chaos to Connection. Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more resources and tools to help with healing on your journey of life. You can impact the globe in the most powerful way possible. Whatever your spiritual background and cultural heritage is, you can transform pain and trauma into building community and connection. Join Dr. Ellie in identifying what you need to heal within and in our world. For more information, visit centeronpeace.com. That's centeronpeace.com.
The views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers and are not necessarily